Good morning, Grace. Hey, before we jump in, I just want to, told you a little bit last week, I'd tell some stories about just Easter and how a lot of that came about. And I just want to tell you some stories as well about just what God's doing in our church, even from the beginning of this year. So let me tell you a little bit about Easter. We had 1,044 people here for our Easter services. That's the most. Yeah, that's the most people we've ever had for an Easter service, even when we've done it at other venues. So that's pretty amazing. And here's what I was most thankful about in that, is how you guys made that happen. The services could not have been spread out any more beautifully or comfortably than they were. And that's literally, I mean, it is a miracle, the fact that everyone didn't just show up at one time, but it says a lot about you guys as the church. You committed to being flexible. You chose to go at times you wouldn't normally go at. You chose to invite other people to come, and you came with a heart of celebration for that day and saying, no matter what happens, we're not here for us, we're here for the Lord Jesus. So really the church, you guys made it such a great day all around. We could not have done it without you guys being so willing to follow those different processes and make it a great day. So give yourselves a round of applause just for that whole thing. Super exciting. Let me just give some thanks to some key groups as well as we went through it. First of all, our worship team here, Isai and the team up here, put in a lot of work really to get everything ready, not just what happened on that Sunday. And I just deeply appreciate all the things they did behind the scenes to get that ready. Just Isai himself has been a blessing in terms of his humble spirit, his teachability. I told him afterwards, I said, the best part about the day was not the music, it was how you grew even in that day in leading our congregation as a worship leader, not just a musician. So continue to pray for him. You know, I'm just thankful for what God's doing in his life and for the humble spirit he brings and his teachability and the team that he's working with. They put a lot of time into that. As well, we had our visual and our sound team. As you guys know, they were doing lots of new stuff. They've had new computers they've had to work with up there in the last month, a new program we needed to run some of these things. They had a whole new setup with trying to project something over there, and you're kind of on site. That's one of those ministries where no one notices you when you do a really good job, but everyone notices you when you make a mistake. Right? You know what I'm saying? Everyone's doing this. That's why we built that big wall there so you can't see them up there. They're some of the most humble servants we have in our church is the sound and visual team. You would not hear what you hear. You would not see most of what you see without them. So just give them a round of applause for all. They were practicing all month to figure all that new stuff out. A lot was thrown on them, and they were just great servants. Our first impressions team, with Eddie overseeing all those. You guys were awesome. I mean, from the portable to the parking lot to the coffee to everywhere you turned, there was someone there waiting to help you and guide people to where they needed to be. Just a fantastic service. I felt welcomed everywhere I went. I mean, I walked over to the portable each worship service to kind of check it out, and there was people opening the door before I even got to the ramp. And then when they saw who it was, they shut it really quickly. But initially, they were really nice, doing a great job. So just appreciate them. And then lastly, our children's and nursery team. They had to do children's ministry. We normally don't do it for Easter. We do a nursery, but we don't do children's ministry because it takes so many people out of the service. They ran it for 3 different services, well over 50 plus volunteers they were managing to have all those kids taken care of and be able to make it possible for us to operate here. So I just thank those people in particular because a lot of work goes into behind the scenes stuff that make it possible for us to do it. And we couldn't do it with all the volunteers and awesome leaders that were up there serving all that time. So I just appreciate that time. Very much so. A great week. Let me tell you a little bit about this up here too. It was fun. Like I said, it was my most fun Easter of all because how it came about was one of those things where we weren't able to do what we had originally planned on doing. We were planning on going back to the Civic Center again. Dr. Nelson had offered us to use that, but and we could have had it Sunday, but they needed it for a school thing now that LISD owns it. On Saturday, some testing things they were doing there, so we weren't able to get set up there because we use it all day Saturday. We basically start Saturday morning and are setting the whole thing up that day in advance, so that's the only way we could have done it. Tammy U has become too small for us now. We realized if we went there, we'd have to do 2 services, and if we can't do everyone together, what's the point in going somewhere else and going through all that hassle? So I kind of threw out to our staff, I said, hey, what do you guys think of us trying to pull it off here? And I kind of threw out the idea of what we spend to go to another venue, what if we took those dollars and put them into just some little things we could do here at the church to make it special and kind of give it a special day like Easter is. And so we began brainstorming, and basically the team came up with all these ideas. So we were able to put the TVs out in the portable to project it and get all that taken care of, which is great because the youth didn't have any projection system out there. Now they have that possibility out there. We were able to remodel this stuff in here. All that, we did all the labor ourselves. Adrian kind of had the idea and the concept, and so we ordered all the wood, and guys from the staff, guys from our church just volunteered and came in, and we spent the whole week, putting all this stuff up, moving electrical sockets and various things like that to get it all done. So it was a lot of fun. This here, this reminds me of home. This is reclaimed or recycled barn wood. And so they knock down old barns, and then they just straighten out the boards, and they sell it to you to put up. And it reminds me a lot of, I grew up, my grandpa had a farm that we spent a lot of time on, and the barns up north, they just sit there forever, and they kind of get that aged, old look like that. And I think it just warms the whole sanctuary up here all together, so it makes it a very inviting place. So it was neat. We were able to do all this for the same as what it would cost us to go to one other venue for Easter, and now we get to enjoy it indefinitely as we go forward. So an exciting time. We had a lot of fun doing it all. Let me talk a little bit about just our church too before we jump into today's message. This is just going into this year and some things that I think are important for you guys to hear about. In regards to adults, just this year, since January, we've had over 59 new guests that have attended or come to church. That's just those who have filled out communication cards. And we would never have that. We wouldn't constantly be impacting and reaching new people if it wasn't for the fact that you guys are constantly inviting people and telling people about what God's doing here. From that, we've had 6 baptisms that we've already performed this year. We have 6 more that are scheduled that will be happening in the next few weeks. So from those new people that come, people are hearing the gospel, and people are trusting Jesus Christ and making those steps that are really changing for them. In our small groups, as you know, we kicked off, we have over 320 adults who are participating in 22 different groups. That's just adults. That doesn't count all of our youth and children that are connected and broken into small groups in their ministries as well. So people are not only coming for the first time and trusting Christ, we have a lot of people who are engaging and growing and following him in the form of small groups. We have 6 couples. With that number of small groups, we took six of our small group leaders out of that pool to do some training with them. And Eddie took them through a program we're going to launch in the fall called Re-Engage. And it's a marriage ministry that's all about helping people re-engage and be re-strengthened in their marriage, and it talks about the key components of a godly marriage. And so we had fewer small group numbers, but more people, and that was taking out 6 of our leaders, and we still had an incredible number of people participating. And now come fall, we'll be able to launch 6 groups, hopefully, in that Re-Engage, and we'll be talking about that more. But that's the opportunities we've had because people have been willing to step up and serve. We've had over 83 people volunteer for our First Impressions and coffee ministry. We had over 20 ladies registered for the women's conference that happened yesterday. Some of you were at that. That went really well. We have about 30 guys right now registered for the men's retreat. Basically, if you're not registered, you're really not a man. But I'm just saying, I'm not trying to put any pressure on you, but all the real men in our church are signed up for that. I'm just saying. It's going to be a great time. If you're not a man, you will be by the end of the weekend. So sign you up. If you're not going to want to miss out. We're going to have a great time. And as Eddie mentioned, get your name on that list because we're going to pool up there together. And we have some manly activities that we begin with. We basically embarrass our church from the day we leave the parking lot. People know who we are because we're stopping and having a lot of fun. But we have stickers that put the names of other churches in our community on them when we do all those things. And then when we get to the retreat, we actually use our own name. So you're good. No one's going to talk to you about it. Students, let me tell you a little bit of what's going on with our students. We have over 100 students and 30 volunteers each week that are participating in our student ministry. Again, this says a lot about your church. That's a lot of youth for the size church that we have. And they come because they feel so welcomed by you all. They feel like this is a place where they can be engaged as part of the church, not a segment of the church. And you guys is welcoming them and allowing them to be engaged in the process makes that possible. We had 96 students participate in Epic Weekend a couple weekends ago where they came for a whole weekend of discipleship. And in that, we had 46 adults volunteer. Many of you opened up your homes because those kids would then all go and 10, 12 of them would sleep in one of your homes as you went. And you just need to know that's such a huge weekend for them. And people, I know it's noisy and it's loud and you got lots of kids sleeping all over the place in your home, but that's exactly what it means to be missional. It's taking your home, something God has given you, and saying, God, this is available for your work. But you may have not said a thing to those kids, but you provided a space where some things took place in their life that they'll never forget. And it's not the same as having them sleep here at the church. They're seeing that what it looks like to be an adult opening their home and using what God's given you to serve him. So we're deeply appreciative of that, and just neat to see how that was happening. In March and April, the students have been organizing the weekly messages. So they're now learning how to preach and teach and share these things with their other classmates, and they're doing a great job with it, and they're being equipped to be sent out into their schools. One of the things we value here is we want to love our kids, but we don't want to baby our kids. We're trying to grow them up. And so we want them to shoulder some of the responsibility and learn those things so that when they leave high school, they don't leave the church. Because as they know, the world doesn't revolve around them the moment they step out. And sometimes we create an environment that does that here. We want them to be maturing young adults. And so that means they're going to make some mistakes, but they're going to make them while they're here with us. And hopefully they'll avoid them as they launch out. So we couldn't do that without you guys being so supportive. And I want to thank as well Leslie Martinez and Rob Garza, who are both been student ministry interns and assistants working with our youth. They're doing a fantastic job. They've been working for about 6 months with them and really making a lot of those things possible as we go through it. Now let me end with our children's ministry. Some awesome things happening up there for you families. We opened a toddler classroom to make more room for age-appropriate groups. So Kimberly Arwood, who oversees that area down there, they've worked hard to get volunteers for all 3 services in there. We put a wall in and divided that, so that whole wing over here is basically nursery, and it's divided up into age-appropriate spaces. That's a ton of work for them to get that all ready, to organize the volunteers and get people to step up. They organize that, but they can't do that without the support of you all saying, hey, these kids are important for us to take care of. More importantly, let me tell you, one of the primary highest impact areas in a church nowadays for families, what keeps people coming when they come, families in particular, is what's happening with my kids. I mean, we live in a day and age right now where, on the negative side, families have begun to idolize their children. They put everything into their kids in a harmful way, but that's the environment that they see. And so one of the things we've had to learn is we got to make sure we're doing a good job. We're not going to fall to that extreme, but if parents come and their kids don't look like they're being taken care of, it doesn't matter how good a message we give or how great a service we put on, they're gone. We've seen that happen. So we've had to up our game a little bit. We've also had to up the standards. We're working towards having multiple people in each classroom just to keep it as safe and as effective as possible. And that takes a ton of work on our staff's plate to organize all those volunteers, because you're working with people that, they just don't want to show up sometimes because they're going out of town, and then they're scrambling to do that. So when you see Kim Arwood over there, or you see Carrie McCartney upstairs, she's the hot one that's upstairs, you know what I'm talking about? I'm constantly going upstairs in between services just to check her out. She's super embarrassed. She's not going to talk to me the rest of the day now, but that's all right. But just let them know you appreciate that work. Kira Phillips, who oversees all of our children's ministry areas and has put in a phenomenal team together, they work really hard behind the scenes and have to constantly organize and finagle all those things. But you guys make their job easy by being available to support this. They aren't the church. We aren't the church. You all are. They just help organize it and keep the church running effectively. They've collected almost $450 of their $530 goal up in children's ministry to purchase a small group of farm animals for a World Vision family overseas that will feed them and definitely allow them to provide food for their family. So they've been teaching them how to give and how to see the needy in other areas, and the kids are super excited about that. They've been developing a worship team, and now they have that in place, so the kids are leading their own group in worship. They have kids up there that have learned the songs, have learned the actions, and so they're leading other kids in worship, and we're trying to, again, create for them an experience that's not for them, but it involves them. And they're doing a great job with that. First Easter, as I mentioned this year, providing children's care for the whole team. And then we've had 82 volunteers committed to our children's and nursery ministry. Just think about that. That seems like a lot, and it is a lot, but you have to realize there's over 100 kids every week up there in that ministry. And we put people on A and B schedules so they're not serving every single Sunday to keep them healthy. It takes a lot of people. So if you have a heart for kids, that's a place you can get connected and know we're going to plug you in a healthy way. But lots of kids, it was so cool. I don't know if you got to see it, but they used the resurrection eggs last Sunday and Saturday, and all these kids got to hear and see the gospel story portrayed and visualized and held it in their hands as they walked through that final week of Jesus' life and what it required of him. And so many kids are hearing the gospel because you guys have been willing to invest in the next generation. You're going to transform the city by reaching the young and launching out kids that maybe didn't have what we had growing up. And many of us fumbled and failed and blew it early in our life, and now we're kind of make up ground. We can start with a generation that's hearing these things and making these decisions from the very start. But we can only do it if we're on board as a church to do those kinds of things. So I'm so excited about what God is doing in our church, and this is just a handful of those things, but it reveals of really what we're going to talk about today is a so what. Jesus died, he rose again, so what? What do we do now? And the last two messages of the series that we've been in, Signs of Life, is going to talk about that.